Welcome back to Lead with Bubba Scott. Before we get into today's episode, I have an exciting announcement to make. Lead with Bubba Scott officially has its first sponsor. The show is now sponsored by the VA Lender, founded by my good friend and Naval Academy classmate, JD Kameen. JD is a fellow veteran Marine officer and one of the absolute best in the country when it comes to VA lending. More importantly, JD is using that expertise to help active duty service members, veterans, and their families achieve the American dream through home ownership. The VA loan is one of the most powerful benefits earned through service, but it can be confusing if you don't have the right person guiding you. JD brings deep expertise, integrity, and a veteran's understanding of what military families actually need. JD has also dedicated himself to educating members of his community, including organizing real estate summits across the country for members of the active duty and veteran community, from Annapolis to San Diego. I'm incredibly grateful for his support, and I couldn't be more excited to have a sponsor whose mission aligns so closely with the values of this show. You can learn more at thevalender.com. Now let's get into today's episode. Today, I'm joined by Shane Mitchell, a Navy veteran and current Northeast Regional Customer Support Manager at Makino, where he helps lead customer support across the manufacturing world. Shane spent 8 years in the Navy as an enlisted aviation maintainer, working on helicopters and FA-18s, before transitioning into a successful civilian career in advanced manufacturing. In this conversation, we talk about enlisted leadership, managing reputation, technical competence, rugby, mentorship, and the transition out of the military, and what veterans can bring to American manufacturing. Let's get it. Shane Mitchell, absolutely stoked to have you on the show. Welcome to Lead with Bubba Scott.
Thank you very much, Bubba. How's your night going?
Oh, it's going great. Can't wait to get after this. Looking forward to chatting with you about everything from your time in the Navy all the way to your work with Makino Manufacturing. So with that, let's get right into this. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what it was like for you growing up, and ultimately your decision process to join the Navy as an enlisted man?
Sure. I was born in Syracuse, New York, raised in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is right outside Philadelphia. Pretty normal childhood. Father, mother, I had an older sister, played a lot of sports, always had a feeling inside of wanting to join the military. My father was a Vietnam vet, very proud Vietnam vet. He was a disabled vet due to Agent Orange exposure. And through my entire life, I always had uncles, grandfathers, cousins that all served in the military. And it was something that I had a calling to. While I was in high school, in my senior year, I was still kind of tossing back and forth of what I wanted to do. Spoke to Marine recruiters at the time, took the pre-ASVAB. But at the same time, I had been accepted to Kutztown University, looking to play rugby there. And at the time, my father and my mother decided, it might be best to give that an option. So I gave it a chance. Did about a year and a half in school. Really wasn't for me. I was more interested in girls and just playing rugby. I was done with the school aspect. And my mother happened to be extremely sick at the time. So I left school, came back home, was working for a little bit. Then my mother passed away. And after that, I felt like I was missing something. I was lost. I was getting into some trouble around town and knew I needed to change. I needed to change my life and do something that would make my parents proud. So randomly on a lunch break while I was managing an Italian eatery in Westchester, Pennsylvania, I enlisted for the United States Navy and left 30 days later.
Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible story. I think it'll resonate with a lot of our listeners as well. There's one thing I'm pretty interested in, as someone coming from a military family as well, you having that experience with your father and the struggles that he had from his service in Vietnam. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about, you felt the call to serve. What was that relationship like? Obviously, you had seen a veteran who had struggles due to his service, and yet you still felt compelled to raise your hand and join the Navy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My father was extremely proud about the service that he did. He was drafted into Vietnam. Um, he spent time in the Air Force. He was military police. He was sent over to Vietnam and was guarding some secret Air Force bases around, a few of them that came under fire. I remember being a young child and my father, us going on a trip to Williamsburg, Virginia. And on the way back, we stopped at the Vietnam Memorial. And in one spot of the wall, my father just fell to his knees and started crying. And he wouldn't tell me the story because I was young and I didn't understand. But then as I got older, he started to explain more and more about what happened over there. And one night in Vietnam, the base was attacked, and out of his whole squadron of officers that were protecting the base, my dad was the only one who survived. And it took a toll on him. But he was very proud of the service that he did, and he was very proud of the country. And he just instilled that pride in me. And I just always felt like the need to do something more than just me, something that's above me. And to me, that was serving our country. I believe there's no greater service that you can do for society and for this country than to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. That is an incredibly moving story, but it is interesting to see the incredible commitment and patriotism of people like your father, who, despite their injuries, despite the hardships that they face, still retain that level of pride. And it totally resonates with me how you were still drawn to serve despite how you had seen how those things impacted your family. So that's an incredible story. And so as you joined the Navy, I find it pretty interesting that you say, you were done with school, or you weren't interested in studying, and then you went on to be aviation mechanic, which, as people know, those guys, they're not just turning wrenches, right? Those are highly technical jobs. So I would love to hear your relationship, or how you began your journey as a technician in aviation maintenance, and then, yeah, if you could walk the dog for us on your on the beginning of your career.
Sure. Well, first off, school was never for me, and it wasn't that I struggled with anything in school. I did not believe in homework, and I did not believe in doing projects. I had already figured I gave them 8 hours of my day, and I had sports, I had work, I had other things going on that I thought just took more of my time at the time. Joining the military, I did not exactly know what I wanted to do at first. I honestly was thinking about joining the Army at the time. So it was 2005. We're talking the height of the Iraq war and the war on terrorism at that time. And I wanted to be a cavalry scout. Life expectancy during wartime is like 90 days in a war zone. So
Wow.
there's something in my head that I thought that was a great idea. So when I originally went to enlist, I went to go see the Army. The recruiter had me sit in the hallway for nearly 2 hours. And the Navy recruiter walked past and said, "What are you doing here?" And I went, "Well, I want to talk to that guy, but he doesn't have any time for me, it seems." He's like, "You ever thought about the Navy?" And I was like, not really a submarine guy. I don't really know about boats. And he was like, "Well, we got a whole bunch of other stuff." So that's where we started talking. And he was like, "Why don't you just take the ASVAB, take the practice test here, see how you do. And we'll go from there. We'll see what, jobs you may fall into." So I took the practice exam, scored an 80. He was like, "Everything opens up for you. You can pretty much do whatever you want." But like I said, I had gotten into some trouble in the area beforehand. So that limited some of my possibilities. Can I say I was young and dumb at that time? That being said, I always had this thing for the movie Top Gun. I know it's funny. It's weird being
Hell
in
yeah.
Navy aviation and saying,
Hell yeah,
I'm
dude.
a jet guy. I always loved the movie Top Gun. And that's so when it came up to jobs and I was like, well, that's the Navy. That's F-18s. I want to do that. Like, I want to work on F-14s. I want to work on F-18s. That's what I want to do. And they were like, all right, well, what in that would you want to do? Well, at the time I was a chef. and I was really good with my hands. And I really like to kind of take things apart, figure out how it worked, put it back together. So they said, how about aviation machinist me? So you'd be a jet engine mechanic. You deal with the propulsion systems, you deal with the fuel systems, the oil systems, the secondary gearboxes. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. It's like, I like that. I like tinkering with stuff. I like tinkering with cars. I always did. Like, this seems right up my alley. So, me being me and listening to my recruiter, he was like, oh, yeah, you're definitely going to be on jets. Don't worry. You're definitely going to be on jets. So I get through boot camp, get my orders. Well, they're sending me to helicopters. Not really what I expected.
Hey, not a bad deal. Whirly
No,
birds
not
are
at
pretty
all.
cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great time there. I was at a command called HSC-2, the Fleet Angels. We were in Norfolk, Virginia. We were a RAG squadron. I had got there just as they became a RAG squadron, and they transitioned from H-3 helicopters to the MH-60 Sierra. So search and rescue choppers.
Yeah. As just for some of our listeners who are unfamiliar, what is a RAG squadron?
A RAG squadron is a training command. So what they do is they train personnel in maintenance and overall upkeep of aircraft. They train new pilots who just come out of flight school to get them fleet ready. And then we also trained rescue swimmers. So we were a big rescue swimmer squadron.
Now they call it the FRS.
Yes. So I was there for 2 years. Had a great time, met some really cool people, learned a lot of stuff, became a plane captain early in my career, was one of the go-to people in our mech shop. We had an award that we did every month called Mech of the Month, and I won it like 4 times in a row. I just did a lot of stuff. Being that I was a bigger guy, there was a lot of things that I could do that other people couldn't. So we would crack the tail rotor and, grease the rack and pinion for the gearboxes, the link that goes up to the tail rotor. I would just crack the tail of the helo and grab the bar and walk it back myself and lock it and then unlock it and walk the whole thing back and ratchet it up. It's a 3-man job.
But, yeah, I don't think it says, I'm sure in the technical manual, it doesn't say anything about doing that as a 1-man job.
No, not at all. But I knew I could do it, and I would stretch myself out for that. And then I happened to have a supervisor, a great guy, 81 Eric Bovard. Love the guy to death. Big country kid from Indiana. And he had originally came from jets. And he looked at me and he goes, Shane, you look extremely bored. And I went, I am. I was like, this is slow. I mean, we do repair work. It takes a while. Then you got to go out there and do vibe analysis and stand on the flight line for 4 days and watch the helo go up and down, up and down, up and down. It just takes forever. And then you have all these phases that you have to do on the aircraft. And I mean, the phases would take weeks to complete. It was just a slow pace. And I was used to a fast paced environment. Working in kitchens, everything is go, 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 go. So he was like, you need to get to the jet community. That's where you need to go. And he was like speaking to my soul because that's where I wanted to go. That's where I originally wanted to go. And he happened to have an in. He happened to know my detailer. Yes. So he happened to have a history with my detailer from back when my detailer was in the fleet. They served together. So he said, let me give him a call. Let me see if I can get you to the jet community. So lucky enough, I got orders to VFA 136, which is in NAS Oceania, the Nighthawks. Nighthawk for life, baby. So I got orders there. They had just started transitioning from Legacies, so the F-18 Hornet, to the new F-18 Super Hornet, and we were getting the Echoes, so they were the single-seaters.
Mm.
So we were just going through this transition, and it was a great time to get there. I was able to get through C school and learn about the aircraft before I got there. And I was kind of right on the same line as the rest of them once I got there. And I had a great time. It was one of the best squadrons I've ever been to. We won countless awards. We won all type of hook awards for landings. We had all types of bombing awards. We got a muck for being out there on deployment. But as good as we were at our job, we partied just as hard, and there was all types of investigations and issues with us.
Ah, jeez.
Well, I mean, we worked our butts off. When it was off time, it was off time. And I met some really great guys there, some really great mentors who helped push me along in my career. And at that second command is when I decided to reenlist. So I reenlisted for just 2 years because I still wasn't 100%. I wanted to do this for the long term. The Navy to me was never going to be a career in my mind. I thought it as a stepping stone to help me reach the potential and put myself in a line of action that I could be proud of. So one thing that I kind of realized as I was in, the longer you were in, the more experience and rank you got. When you got out, a lot of corporations would look at you the same way as a college grad because of the commitment and the technical training that you had. And I knew I was going to go from here into a technical field. That was the plan. So I enlisted for 2 more years to go on deployment. Had a very fun time out in the Persian Gulf on the Big E, USS Enterprise. Did the last 2 deployments on that bad boy. That was interesting, being on a ship that was kind of built in the Korean War. I think it was an old battleship hull that they turned into a aircraft carrier. So it was falling apart by the time I got on there. But I always have a love for that ship. Very interesting deployment we were on. A lot of port visits got canceled. We got redirected while out there to sea. We were the first aircraft carrier ever to chase Somalian pirates.
Oh, wow.
Very interesting, but we had a very fast ship that could keep up. So it was a very interesting deployment, that one in 2010.
Yeah.
Saw a lot of stuff there. The second deployment was a little different. We had a little more fun, got to stop in more places, because it was kind of the last shakedown of the Big E.
Yeah.
But that 2010 deployment was pretty hectic. Saw a lot of things that I didn't think I would see on this side of the world as an aviation mechanic. But I mean, it's war, things happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. So I want to circle back on kind of what you described as that moment when that mentor or that guy you kind of looked up to at the squadron took you under his wing and said, "Hey, like, I'm going to talk to the detailer for you." Because I think it's, a really important aspect of your story is that you really wanted to go jets. You wanted to go fast. You wanted to work on F-18s, and you got, your second or whatever choice, right? You got put in the rotary wing side of things. And I think that when young people get, or really anybody, when we sign up for something, we don't get what we want. It can be, especially when you're doing something like turning wrenches on planes, and you're, the amount of work that our maintainers do in the Navy and Marine Corps and really across the board in the military is incredible. And the hours you guys put in, the amount of work required is just crazy. So to maintain that level of motivation when it's on a platform you didn't necessarily want to work on, I think takes a lot of guts. And I think that that's an inflection point, right? Like, if you don't get what you want out of the detailer, you can be upset about it, and you can allow that to degrade your morale, which will degrade your performance. But you had this opportunity to something that I was always advised to do as a Marine officer and as a pilot. You weren't always going to get the job you wanted, but wherever you get sent, bloom where you're planted, right? And by doing a good job as a mechanic on these helicopters, you earned yourself a reputation that showed that this guy was a squared away sailor and he was a squared away mechanic. And this is the type of person that we want to see go on to bigger and better things. And so I think it's a really good lesson for a lot of people. It's like, bloom where you're planted, wherever you're sent, even if it's not your number one choice, particularly in the military. You're sometimes going to get those assignments you don't want to do, but crush it. And you too, you'll get recognized.
I completely agree with that. My father always instilled in me a sense of pride in everything that I do. Whatever you do, if you commit to it, do it 120%. Leave everything out there. It may not be what you want to do, but give it your all the time. Um, the one thing he taught me, and that I've heard repeatedly through my career, not just in the Navy, but afterwards, is reputation is really all you have. And that's the one thing that you can truly control is your reputation, how people see and view you. So that is very important to me, to build a stronger reputation, be known as a hard worker, somebody who's going to give you 120%, somebody you can count on when times get tough. I'm the guy who can be there. I'll be that rock.
Yeah.
And so even though I didn't get what I wanted off the bat, and I had an understanding already from my father that, hey, sometimes Uncle Sam has other plans for you. It may not be
Yeah.
what you want, but it may be where you're needed. And I took
Yeah.
that to heart.
No, that's absolutely huge. And when it comes to reputation, the thing that you can always do is you can always show up on time. You can always care by trying and by showing up, giving your best effort every time. That is a part of your reputation, and along with your integrity that no one can ever change. And I had one of the best CEOs I ever worked for. He basically had this mindset that as long as you show up and you give everything you got and you give it, um, he will do whatever he can to help you out. But if you don't care and you don't show up and it's not important to you, the success of the mission, the success of the team is not important to you, he takes that as a personal affront. And I couldn't agree with that more. And so you're absolutely spot on. I think particularly when it comes to reputation, the things you touched on are key. So we got a pretty good taste of your experience coming up as a mechanic, but I know you also, we talked about rugby earlier on, and I wore my my Wharton Warthogs social jersey today. Go Hogs, Hogs for life, in honor of what I knew we would chat about rugby today. So we talked a little bit about the leadership lessons you learned as an enlisted mechanic early on in your career, and then you went on and you played for the all Navy rugby team. Can you talk about that experience and like just give us a rundown? How does that even work? You're turning wrenches on planes, and all of a sudden you're playing 10 for the Navy.
Well, rugby, I've been playing for years. I started as a freshman in high school, Bishop Shanahan High School in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. I really wanted to play football, but my school didn't have football at the time. And they kept telling us, oh, it's coming. We're going to create a team. We're going to create a team. But they had this thing called rugby. And so I was like, you know what? I'll give it a try. I hear it's like soccer and football combined. Sounds like fun. I was intrigued by it. I was like, this sounds great. So let's give it a shot. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I had an amazing coach. His name was Greg Carabin. He really broke down the game for us in a way that we could understand. He helped us build a team that was more like a family, and we all took care of each other. And we didn't just learn about rugby, we learned about life. Greg Carabin was also a Boy Scout master, an Eagle Scout. He was my Scoutmaster at one point when I was younger. And he was just an all-around stand-up guy. I ended up being pretty good at rugby at the time. I learned I was actually pretty decent at the game, and ended up going to Kutztown University and playing for Coach Doc Jones up there at Kutztown. He's a legend in the sport and collegiate rugby. Kutztown University is a top 20 D1 team. We play a lot of the big schools. We had a huge rivalry with the Naval Academy, with Penn State, with Princeton, Army. We were all over the map. And I loved playing rugby for Coach Doc. Doc really pushed me to be the best that I could. I came to Kutztown as a fly half and an 8-man. And they asked me to fill in for scrum half at one practice, and I tripped and threw a perfect pass. And Doc was like, hey, you're the scrum half now. And I went, no, I'm not. That's way too much running. No, I'm not. But I ended up playing scrum half for a little bit. And it was a great experience. I met a really great bunch of guys. I mean, we were inseparable. We all took care of each other, watched each other's back, on the field and off. But but we did like to party quite a bit, and that was kind of a distraction. Once I left Kutztown, I always had a yearning for that team chemistry, that bonding moments that we used to do in the rugby field. It's just a different world, a different mentality than any other sport I had ever played. So when I joined the Navy, I found out that there was the All Navy Sports program, and they had a rugby team. And I had just started playing for a local club there in Virginia called the Norfolk Blues. They're a Division I men's club at the time. And we were top 20 in the nation. And a lot of the team had current military members on there, a lot of officers, some that played at the Naval Academy, Virginia Tech, Clemson was a big team. And they told me about All Navy Rugby, and they pushed me to sign up. So I put in my paperwork and had to get my commanding officer to approve it. And I went out to training camp in Jacksonville, Florida, and got selected, and had a fun time in 2007 at the all-service tournament in Camp Lejeune. And then the next year we were in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I ended up switching over to jets, and we were getting ready for a deployment, and everything got kind of put on hold for a little bit as operational readiness came calling. Came back from deployment and was looking to get back into the scene, All Navy Rugby. And that's when they decided that we weren't going to play 15s anymore, and we were going to go to sevens rugby.
Oh, okay.
Sevens is not my cup of tea, but you know me, I'm 6'2", 290 pounds. I mean, when I was playing rugby, I was 220 pounds. Yes, I ran like a gazelle, but I did not have a large gas tank. So at that
I think
point,
we may need to call some of your teammates to corroborate whether or not.
Oh, they will definitely tell you that. I had quick bursts, but it did not last long. So sevens was not my thing. So at that point, I decided to step away from All Navy Rugby, but I still kept those friendship with those guys. A bunch of them played with me at Norfolk. There's a bunch of them that played for Virginia Beach and in Newport News, and then we all decided we need to play together, and we all came to Norfolk and continued there. And it was an absolute blast. I played up until nearly the very last day I was in the service. And then from there, I had a lot of rugby injuries over the years. I was dealing with back injury, which I still am, 5 ruptured discs in my lower back, and I had to retire. My body couldn't take it anymore. From playing from 1996 to 2013 took a toll on me.
Yeah,
and
I think that's probably a reasonable decision to step away at that point. I guess my question to you is, you mentioned, you missed the team aspects of rugby, but can you talk a little bit about how being on a team while you were playing at a high level in college helped prepare you for the work that you were going to do in the Navy?
Yes. I mean, when I was in high school, we were a team, but we were all young kids. Coming into college, we were all away from home. We realized all we had was each other, and to build those relationships. It was always next man up. That was Doc's big thing. Next man up. A guy goes down, next man up. You got to be ready. You always got to be ready. And that just kind of resonated with me. The always trying to be the guy who was counted on. One of my biggest downfalls when I played was I never wanted to say I was injured. I played through a lot of injuries. I messed up my knee on multiple occasions. I mean, at one point it cuts down. I put popsicle sticks and duct tape around it as a makeshift brace so I could play. Probably shouldn't have, because I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks afterwards, but I needed to do what I needed to do for my team. And that's what mattered to me. And I knew they were giving that commitment, and I had to give that too. Joining the military, it seems like that same team. It was always next man up. Guy transfers out, guy gets injured, something happens, next man up, mission has to go on. Mission must continue. And being that we were all away from home, all we had was each other. So we looked out for each other. We were family. And it really made me feel the same way as I did on these rugby teams. I mean, because we treated each other like family. We spent times after games together during the week, watching movies, watching game tape, partying. When I was in the service with Norfolk playing, I mean, we had barbecues all the time. We would go to, the local bar to watch sports games together. We would meet up with the girlfriends, the families. Like, it was a giant family. And I mean, just as I always say, I'm a Nighthawk forever, I'm blue forever. I will always be a Norfolk Blue. I still keep contact with all those guys. And it's still family. They always will be. And that's how I feel about my brothers and sisters I served with. They're family. They always will be.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway is the power of sport and how it's a preparatory for lessons you learn in life. And I think a lot of the things you touched on, the camaraderie, the level of accountability, the making sure that the job gets done no matter what. They're definitely things you learn when you're playing sports at a high level, or even at a varsity or a level in high school where there are repercussions to not showing up, right? And your teammates trust you and they rely on you. What better lessons can you learn as you're stepping into the service? And so we talked, I think that's a pretty interesting transition there, because we talked a little bit about how your experience with rugby helped prepare you to be successful in the Navy, being away from home, relying on your teammates, showing up, being accountable, being reliable. And then uh, I would love to hear about your experience as you went to transition out of the Navy, and then kind of holistically looking at how those same lessons you learned on the rugby pitch and then on the ship translated into your success that you've enjoyed now. So can you talk a little bit about your transition out of the Navy and what that looked like?
Sure. It was 2013. I knew I was done with my naval career. I had accomplished what I had set out for by that time. Um, the Navy was changing, so I thought it was time for me to move on. Um, with that being said, I was looking for something that gave me the same sense of pride and camaraderie and support like I had received in the service. Um, and that's where Makino came in. So I went to a hiring conference by Bradley Morris at, I believe it was the Marriott next to the Hampton Coliseum. It was the first interviews I had done in 10 years. You don't really interview for the service. So it was the first real job interview I'd done in 10 years. Makino was the very first interview I did at like 7:45 in the morning. I was the very first person they interviewed out of 70 candidates. And I was nervous. I really wasn't prepared. Really didn't know what Makino did. But I knew what I was capable of. So I went in there. We started talking. Everything went really well. They asked about my technical expertise on aircraft, how we diagnose, how we troubleshoot. And I explained my technical expertise, what I did in the service, and then talked a little bit about outside and what I did, playing rugby for the Navy, playing rugby in college. I had a great opportunity that I got to go to the national championship tournament multiple times. So it was something different than what they had heard before. And so a week went by. I had 2 more interviews that day, and they weren't really anything I was interested in. Week went by, and I got a call from Makino asking if I would like to go out to Mason, Ohio and see their headquarters and do another round of interviews. So I took some time off and flew out to Mason, Ohio, and I was nervous, extremely nervous. I was like, all right, we're going to interview with more people. I still don't 100% understand what you guys do. But I'm really interested in the technology aspect of it. I knew they were in manufacturing. I knew they were on the forefront of innovation, which is something that was really appealing to me. I knew that they did a lot of work in the aerospace division, and that was something that I felt like I came from. So I thought it would be a good transition. They also sold me on the fact that it was a very veteran-friendly company. The guy I interviewed with was a Navy veteran. All 3 of the guys I interviewed with at Makino when I went there were all Navy veterans. So it made me feel comfortable. I knew that these guys knew the feeling that I had going on at that moment. And they pretty much told me, Shane, we know we want you. We're trying to sell us to you. And at that point, I felt wanted. Like, this is where I needed to be. The job that I went into as a field service engineer is a hard job. It is a very taxing job, much like the military. It is a traveling job. You were gone 95% of the time. I would fly out on a Monday, come back either that Friday or maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now. So being that you're traveling and you're gone a lot, working and being with other people was a big thing for me to help stabilize and get me used to this. And Makino is all about working in teams. And what I was doing at that time was working on large machines. That's what I got brought into due to my aerospace background. And our large machines are mostly aerospace machines. So I was out there on these jobs with 3, 4, 5 other guys. And you became like a family out there. You're out there for 2, 3 months building a machine, building multiple machines. I mean, you got really close. And the support that they gave you was incredible. I mean, from the top down, there was veterans throughout the company that understood what I was going through and how to help guide me to be as successful as possible. And I had some really great mentors in the company. A lot of them are in upper management now, and have done really well for their career, and they've helped bring me along. One of our directors, Ken Creech, he's an ex-Navy guy. He was a mentor to me, and he really helped me understand the scope of the job, understand how to present myself and how to be the best field service engineer possible, and how to work on that reputation. The same one that I had built in the military, now I had to start all over and build it in a different industry. And in our industry, in manufacturing, everybody talks. Everybody knows each other. So your reputation is all you have. If you have a bad reputation, you can get locked out of this industry pretty quickly. So I always wanted to be the guy to count on. I made some mistakes early on. I grasped for too much before I was ready. And I had a great manager early on in my career. His name was Andy Schuler. He had been with Makino for like 40 years. He told me you're going to have a whole bunch of ocean moments where you're just going to be down and out. You're not going to be able to figure out. You're going to be struggling. And then you're going to have this aha moment where all of a sudden everything clicks and it becomes easy for you. And if you have the mechanical aptitude, the electrical aptitude, and the drive and commitment, once that happens, the sky's the limit. And I got lucky to hit that moment and just blossom in my career. But if it wasn't for those fellow veterans that understood what I was going through, who honestly cared for me, not just as a coworker, but as an individual, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I feel that veterans, that exiting military members who are going into the corporate sector, they need to have that. They need to have that backing and stability, what they had in the service, to get them started. That is key. It's got to be a seamless transition.
Yeah, dude, there's what a great explanation of your transition, and you hit so many themes that we touched on throughout your career, from, finding a place where you can get that camaraderie, looking for great mentors, like you had the different coaches you had, the guy who put you in touch with the detailer in the Navy, and then as you made your transition, leaning on those veterans who came before you and walked that transition. I'll talk a little bit about my own transition as well. As I was getting out, I did this incredible trip with my wife across country. We took about a month and a half, 2 months to spend a week in different parts of the country and see the most incredible national parks and all these things. And it was such a blessing to get to spend that time with Meg. And, she's my favorite person in the whole world. And I realized though that despite having this incredible time at, Arches National Park, at all these beautiful places in our country, and being with the person I love more than anything, I realized how much it impacted me that I was detached from a team, and
Right.
I realized that I was actually having a hard time during this transition, even though I was like basically on vacation, because I was no longer snapped into my squadron, which was such a robust teamwork, camaraderie, a group of people who just make you better every day. And I saw how important that was to me. And then as I got here to Wharton and got to meet the other veterans here and snap into the community here, it was like a total game changer. And not just the veterans too. I mean, obviously that group is so special and important to me, but that my classmates here who, I think going into school was a good way to transition for me, because I could go play rugby and be in a play and all these things where you get that community. But that's such an important part of the transition experience for veterans, because you go from, some guys, they go from being deployed to out of the military in around 30 days. Like that
Mhm.
happens a lot more regularly than I would like to admit. But those guys need that network and that group of people. So it's so awesome that you found that at Makino, and it obviously speaks really well to the corporate culture they have there and the group of veterans they have there, and the commitment that the company has to finding good spots for veterans to land. And I think much to their benefit, like they're able to latch on to all the experience that you had overseas in demanding environments. And they do some retooling. So instead of working on an F-18, you're working on these different machines, but they're able to tap into that leadership experience, that comfort with discomfort that you honed over such a long period of time. So in the theme of that transition, I guess I would ask you, as someone who successfully navigated the transition from active duty into a successful career in industry, if you were able to reach back and talk to yourself, or young Shane the sailor getting out, or if you're thinking about young guys and gals who are getting out of the military today looking for that next spot, particularly on the enlisted side, what advice would you have for them as they go to step out of the military?
My advice would be, don't go out there and just find a job. Don't just find something that's going to fill your pocket and fill your time. Find something that you love. Find somewhere that feels like home and gives you that same sense of pride that you had while you were in the service. Don't take anything less. Don't sell yourself short. You have no idea how valuable you are out there in the market. And that's something that I believe sailors don't understand. They look at, or, other branches of the military, veterans in general, they look at what they did in their career and they go, now what can I do outside? And they don't realize that, okay, maybe the job, the MOS that you had, the rate, may not transition very well to the outside world. But the intangibles that the military instilled in you are extremely valuable, and every employer out there is searching for that. The guy who's accountable, the guy who's on time, the guy who's presentable, the guy who can withstand the stress and pressures that may be bestowed upon them during their career. The guys who aren't going to be happy just sitting still and want to affect change and want to be important to what they're doing. I don't believe these guys understand that. They're extremely marketable. Everybody wants veterans. They need to just realize what they truly have and then make sure they find something they love doing in the process.
Yeah, that is such great advice. And I think, you're such a great example of not just you, but also the company you work for, that they, a good example, they do want veterans, and they do want to see these guys who have all those intangibles that, you can't grow overnight in a training camp or an orientation, right? Like those are things that you learn over a period of time, those hard deployments, those highly technical skills you learned over that period of time, operating on the flight deck on a carrier, hard to imagine a more hectic environment. And then the one thing I would add that I think is interesting too is I think that as much as guys need to understand how marketable and how desirable they are as well, it's also important to come in with humility as well. Because realistically, if you think about it, and you made such a good point earlier, you had a stellar reputation, or at least a reputation that was well respected with regards to timeliness, knowing your stuff, working hard, like all those things that it takes time to build those up. You have to remember as you transition out that you're not just endowed with those in your next role. And I think that that's important, not just for veterans, but for anyone who's doing a career change. I think that's a really challenging thing to navigate as you leave your career, whether it was in the military or something else, and you're doing that transition. You do have to rebuild that reputation, and you can enjoy the success, the recommendations, the things that come with, the respect of coming from that other industry or from the military, but you still have to come in with humility, and you still have to be willing to work and show that, yeah, there's a reason why you got that letter of recommendation, or yeah, there's a reason why it matters that why people actually are interested in veterans who served on the flight deck of a CVN. It's like, because they do these things right. And so you have to continue to do those things. So as much as guys got to understand how valuable they can be, that you also have to be willing to take a little bit of humble pie. I think that particularly applies to a lot of officers who get out, who of course, I was a major in the Marine Corps, albeit only for a few months, and my peer pilots they gave me a hard time for putting on major. But I think it can be challenging for a lot of guys who were in command or something like that. You're in command of a rifle company, you're in charge of 130 Marines, all who will do exactly what you ask of them without hesitation. And then you're gone, and you're going to be a junior person starting a new career. And I think most veterans that I've met have navigated that with grace, but I think it is a challenge that people need to be cognizant of as they move away from their time in the military service.
I completely agree with that. It is very hard to give orders and then flip to taking orders, from being the top dog to being the guy at the bottom of the totem pole. I mean, I was really good at my job in the military. I was asked to do a lot of things. I was counted on for when times were tough. If there was an issue, they knew Shane could figure it out, or 82 Mitchell could figure it out. Let's set it out there. We got this done. But at the same time, when I got out, I knew I wasn't the guy anymore, but I wanted to be the guy again. I knew what that felt like. I knew what I wanted as a person. So trying to come in and just swallow everything and go, okay, I'm at the bottom. I'll do the dirty jobs. I'll do the nasty stuff again. I'll do whatever it takes to get back to where I was. That's what I was going to do. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody is comfortable with going from being the top to being the bottom again. So that is a very extremely hard transition for guys.
Yeah. And that's where I think that self-awareness, I think that self-awareness is one of the most critical traits for anybody to be successful, either as a leader or just in anything that you do. Yes, I think that kind of sums up what we've been saying, which is, you need to understand the value that you bring to the team, but you also need to understand that there are things you don't know, especially as you move to a new job, you take a new role, you transition. And any leader who comes in, who acts like he or she knows everything, or has nothing to learn, obviously is putting out a bad message, because it's so important to be self-aware, to understand your blind spots. I spoke with Andrew Little a couple weeks ago on our last episode, and he mentioned, the most important thing a leader can do is to want to be wrong, so that his or her, the people who work with them are feel good about bringing up ideas. And I think in the same way that goes with the humility and self-awareness. So if we're going to ask that same question to you, what do you think if you were able to talk to any young aspiring leader and give them advice for one leadership trait or one thing they could do to get better and prepare themselves for leadership positions either in the Navy or in industry, what trait would you recommend?
Be trainable. That's a huge thing. Be willing to learn, be willing to take things in, and be willing to blend in with your surroundings. The key to being successful is being able to assimilate into the culture that you're working in, into the industry that you're working in. So be adaptable, be able to take change, take advice, and do positive with it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Trainability is incredibly important. I think it does touch on a lot of what we've discussed in terms of that humility and that willingness to understand, that willingness to learn. So before we go, I guess I would just be really interested in hearing. Do you have anything big coming up with your work today, or anything that people should know about with what you've got going on?
I mean, right now, it is amazing to see the growth that is happening right now in American manufacturing. Um, American manufacturing is the backbone of our country. It has always been something of pride that we've had as a nation, being a leader in technology and innovation. Um, and it's nice to see that it's coming back. For years, we saw it start to branch off. Companies would send their work overseas to save the dollar, to make more money. But it's good to see American manufacturing coming back. I've seen a lot of companies growing, a lot of huge opportunities. Us as Makino are having some of the most successful years we've had. We took a big hit during COVID, as everybody did, as American manufacturing did. And it's taken a couple of years for us to come back from. Right now, we are booming and we're continuing to grow. The orders are flying in. The growth is out there. The economy is going to get stronger. There's a lot of positivity out there that people need to know about. Right now, we hone in on the negatives that are going on right now in society and what's going on in our country and around the world. And there's also a lot of positive things that are going on. And we need to really focus on some of those right now and see the growth that we are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not often that we talk like geopolitics or national strategy or anything like that on the show, but Lead with Bubba Scott as a show supports American manufacturing conceptually. And I think it's, incredibly important as we look at the future, making sure that we're able to scale up manufacturing rapidly for national security and geopolitical reasons as well, besides just providing great jobs for hardworking Americans. So that's exciting to see the growth and exciting to see where you guys are going to go. And you'll have to stay in touch and make sure we're aware of what you guys have going on. But Shane, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely awesome to chat with you about your upbringing, your career in the Navy, your time on the rugby pitch, and how you were able to transition your skills from working on F-18s to a successful career in manufacturing with Makino.
Well, thank you very much, Bubba. It's been a pleasure to be on your show. I've been super excited about this. As some of your listeners do not know, we are related somewhat. I am married to Bubba's cousin, Miss Katie McGuire Mitchell. And this is something that I've always wanted to do and be able to talk to you about, to explain my background and the experience that I've had and how the military and all my experiences has led me to where I am today as a leader within my industry and my company.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing. I've been just as interested, and I think it's really fantastic, your description of how to be successful as folks transition out of the Navy and out of the military. And I think it's really a really important takeaway for any people in industry listening to the show, veterans can bring a lot to you. And for any of the veterans or active duty service members listening today, remember to always reach back down the ladder as people make their transition, just like Shane's doing, and just like the guys who looked out for him at Makino did before him. As people make transitions, whether it's the military or whether it's career changes, mentorship is absolutely critical to help people succeed and land well. So keep that in mind, and we'll see you next time for the next show. So thanks so much, Shane.
Thank you, Bubba. Have a great night.
Thanks so much for listening to Lead with Bubba Scott, brought to you by the VA Lender. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show and leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow along on Instagram at Lead with Bubba and let us know your thoughts on the episode. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.
Nighthawk for life, baby.